happens to be this evening is a topic which I really want to speak about for a long time here because it's very misunderstood, but it's such a big topic, and you're not going to hear it me too often, but it's such a big topic that to crunch it down is like 40 minutes is virtually impossible. So we're going to literally just skim over the top, and we're going to do cliff notes. Okay, so you're going to leave with more, and I apologize. Usually I like to crunch everything down. You leave with like a nice circle, a picture of one topic. We're just touching this. It's a very big topic. Okay, and I think I haven't spoken about this in many, many years at the JC, but it's an important topic, and I thought in the process of this course, it's a good place to put it. And it's actually, the topic is the Messiah, Mashiach. Right? Like that? Respect? And this class is about Mashiach, who, when, where, how, and why. But in the process, we're also it's going to come up, this is a talk in and of itself, of false messiahs. Because you only know someone's false when you know what the real thing's about. And it's pretty much accepted in the Jewish world. You should realize this. I find this topic fascinating, by the way. But, I mean, every topic's fascinating, but there's been more damage done to our people through the thousands of years we've been a people, through false messiahs, than through holocausts, pogroms, and exiles. I mean, false messiahs has been a plague that has been with our people. People don't realize this, for thousands of years. Is actually mentioned in the Torah, a warning against them. So this evening, I'm not going to discuss false messiahs. People will say, we're going to discuss this evening a topic which most people are not aware of. What makes a real messiah? What is this idea of this messianic? Is Judaism a messianic religion? Right? And there's a lot of other religions out there today, principally Christianity and Islam. And in order to understand what's going on with them, this topic is crucial because according to Christianity, the Messiah is coming back for a second viewing, or the sequel, and a lot of what the Christian world is getting involved in, especially the evangelicals, is based upon this. And the Islamic world is also rife with a discussion on this topic because they also believe in this idea of Messiah. Anyone know the expression for the Islamic Messiah? What it's called? It's not called the Messiah, it's called the Mahdi. The Mahdi. And a lot people say of the activities of people like the heads of Iran, right, these people who run the country at the moment, this dictatorship over there, are actually based upon their belief of the Messiah. Okay, and how they see him. I mean, is that not interesting? It's a lot of politics, geopolitical politics, and I mean, it escapes out of religion and it becomes eschatology, meaning the end of days and how it's going to come along. You do realize that many people are anticipating the end of days. I'm not just like the few like crazy people or like, Wednesday afternoon, 2 o'clock, I'll be in my bunker, right? Not those people, them as well, but the rest of the world. So one of this evening is, what's the Jewish view? Do we have this idea of the end of days? Some call marriage the end of days, but that's not what we're discussing this evening. The idea is, what's the idea? So let's start with a word, and the word is Mashiach. Ever that expression before, Mashiach? Mashiach, Mashiach, Mashiach. Ay. You've had that one. Okay, so first of all, we're going to start with, I think most people do not realize, and that is that Mashiach, according to Jewish thinking and writing and prophecy, actually, is an individual, a person of flesh and blood, not God. Okay, so we've already chopped them out of the way. But having said that, it's also a time, an era, right, which is known as the pre-Messianic era, that is actually going to, a number of things are going to happen, which are going to lay the soil, as it were, for the coming of the Mashiach. So this evening we're going to discuss who this person is, what this person's job is, and why are we involved in this? And is it a part of mainstream Judaism? Is this like a cultish thing? Is this like a few people who, maybe a few Jews in Israel, maybe some in Brooklyn, are interested in this? Is this what this whole messianic thing is for us? Anyone know? So, I mean, you shouldn't be too surprised to hear that this is actually a major part of Jewish life and prayer and thought. And to be perfectly straight about it, Jewish history has a beginning, a middle, and an end. And I say Jewish history, actually world history, actually has a beginning, middle, and end. And the beginning we've spoken about a lot of times. And the middle is what's going to happen, up to... And there's an end point where things are going to change. When we say the end of days, it's not the view you may have that everything's going to blow up, right? The idea is that there's going to be a fundamental change, okay? And to be honest with you, most people are not too sure what it's actually really going to be like. That's most people. They get a flavor and a feel of it, but it's hard to actually know what it's exactly going to be like. So what we'll discuss this evening is actually one of the 13 principles of faith. Maimonides makes a list of 13 principles that make us into a people. And the idea of one God, and the idea of prophecy, and the idea of Torah, and all the things we kind of like, we've discussed. So one of these principles, number 12 actually, is the belief, Ani ma'amin be'emunah shalem, with a perfect faith, says the Rambam. I didn't have time to print this out for everyone, but I have a 13-page printout, which I was going to print out. I've been so busy, I apologize. But I'm happy. I'll bring it next week, God willing, for those who are interested. But B'viat HaMashiach, that there will be this person who's going to come into the world. V'yafal pi shitma man, this is important. Even though there's a little bit of a delay, we'll discuss what that means, because if God's running the show, why is it delayed at all? You know what I'm saying? If there's meant to be an end scene to a movie, right, the director said, I'm sorry, we've had to delay the end scene. I'm like, but I'm in the movie already. Shouldn't have been planned already. So we'll discuss what that means. But even though he may delay, im kol zeh achak Eloah, we still have an obligation as Jews to anticipate this era and this person and what this person is going to have to do for us. Okay? So that's really what we're talking about. Now, this individual, we'll start with the person, we'll talk about the times. This individual, the word Mashiach, I don't know what the word Mashiach actually means. Let's start with that, I guess. The word Mashiach, has anyone heard the expression Mashiach, by the way? Put your hands up if you've heard of the expression. So the word Mashiach actually means anointed. Anointed. That's what it doesn't mean leader, right? It may refer to a person. Well, what is anointed? Well, in history, we had things called kings. Those came to Israel with us. And the way a king became a king was that he was chosen by a prophet, right? From a certain line. It's going to be important as well. And this individual, as part of the process to coronate, I mean, you don't have kings in this country, they would actually pour oil onto this individual's head. That was the process. Why oil and why the head is a whole discussion, but oil was poured onto the king's head. And that was the coronation, just like you put a crown on the person's head, and you would bring a queen, but the oil, so this process of pouring the oil, right, is called Mashiach. So it's actually, Mashiach literally means, right, the Messiah in Hebrew, Mashiach, the anointed one. Which means this individual is going to be a king. Well, one second. But we don't have kings anymore in Jewish life. So the idea being that we're going to reintroduce the idea of kingship in Jewish life. Well, how do you become king? Right? Like a Mel Brooks movie, like, it's good to be king? I mean, what exactly is that? So the idea is that we actually have a lineage system in Judaism. If you remember, we had a guy called Jacob, Yaakov, and he had a number of sons. And one of them was called Yehuda, Judah. And we said the word Yehudi, Jew, comes from the word Yehuda, right? And actually now for us, all Jews, but originally actually only referred to people from that particular tribe, right? That particular tribe of Yehuda. Now each tribe had its own kind of forte, what it kind of introduced. Some were business people, some were Torah scholars. So from the tribe of Yehuda came kings, which means if you want to be a king, you're going to have to prove that your great-great-great-great-great-great-great-great-grandfather, direct line, because it's a tribal thing, is from King David, right? Because he was actually the second king of the Jewish people, okay? Actually, it was in a different tribe. Benjamin, Shaul, right? Shaul, Saul was the original king. He made a mistake. The tribe changed to Yehuda, and they were told that it comes right through that line. So this person is going to come along, and he has to prove that he is a king. That's number one. So kingship is coming back, and that's the word Mashiach. All right, sounds cool. I mean, what do kings do nowadays? I mean, not too much, do they? I mean, they rule countries. I mean, any kings today you know of? Any queens you know of? What's one of the longest reigning monarchs in the world? It's actually the Queen of England. And what does she do? I mean, not too much. She opens, supermarkets, and she smiles and waves a lot, and she wears a nice big heavy crown on her head, and she gets chauffeured around, and she, visits different countries, and everyone comes out and greets her. Is that the idea of kingship in Judaism? What's a king actually meant to do? So that's something we're going to try to figure out, because there is actually a specific role a king has in Judaism. And that person may not be the smartest person, as in the greatest thinker. Person may not be the greatest Torah scholar, may not be the most charismatic, but such a person has a specific function. It's worth thinking about. I found this interesting. What role a king has. I mean, originally there was a first king that turned up in many countries that had kings. right? And queens were many queens. And this person has a certain role to do. And many prayers that you actually know of talk about king. There's a famous prayer called Kaddish. You've heard that before. Okay, so people are obsessed with this prayer. They think it's actually not about death. It's about God. God is great, runs the world, and all this kind of stuff. But if you look in Kaddish, going to many versions of it actually, it says, Yiskadav Yizgashmi Rabba, Biyalma Divrach Yerute, it's actually not Hebrew, it's Aramaic, V'yamlich Malchote V'yismach Pukanei V'krev Mishchei, which means, exalted and sanctified is God's great name, no death mentioned, in the world which he has created according to his will, may establish his kingdom, hello, may his salvation blossom. Now, that word blossom, right, and may bring soon his anointed one, which is Mashiach. This idea of blossoming Mashiach is a part of Jewish life. When we pray, a lot of our prayers talk about the descendants of King David reestablishing this whole kingship thing. So in our prayers and in the prophets, okay, again, this is a lot more, but we see this reference to the idea. Okay, so who is he and what's his role? So the idea of a king is to, originally, was to inspire people. People would look up to this individual. These people weren't out partying. I mean, actually, we've had many bad kings as well in Jewish history who completely became dictators. But I guess, imagine a dictator who was really good. That's really the way to think about it nowadays, because nowadays kings and queens don't have much power. They're just figureheads. Right? You realize that. You see, they're just literally figureheads, like pictures on stamps and coins, you see. But originally, they had tremendous power. So the only people who have that kind of power nowadays are dictators. But they're really bad people. So imagine, I mean, this is the way I kind of figure out in my head, imagine a really good dictator that had all that power to himself with very few checks and balances, which you Americans are obsessed with, right? Checks and balances, yeah? And this individual wanted to do good. Wow, can you imagine? So that's what a king did. A king had tremendous power. He could confiscate property, raise taxes, grab taxes, build up a kingdom, right? Take a lot of power and money, invade other countries, right? And he had all this power, but imagine he did that because he wanted the world to be a better place. Okay? I guess that's the closest I can kind of fix in my head. So that's where we're going to be leaning towards when we talk about this idea of the Messiah. And the word Messiah, Mashiach, also means leadership. It's actually an acronym as well. The word Mashiach, I mean, some people have the name Mashiach. Very few people. But the word Mashiach actually had 4 letters in it. Mem, Shin, Yud, Chet. And some say it's actually an acronym for Menachem, Shiloh, Yonan, and I think Hanun, I have to remember. It's a Talmudic piece. So it's actually, those 4 letters refer to the 4 names that Mashiach could have. Okay? There was a recent individual who passed away not so many years ago, whose first name was Menachem. So many people within a certain area of Judaism became very excited, and this was a very great person who did a tremendous amount for the Jewish people, and galvanized a lot of Jewish power and money for the good of the Jewish people, and many people felt that he was the Mashiach. But the problem was he died. And once you die, according to the Rambam, you're out of the running. Okay? And then they said, well, maybe he can come back again. So, I mean, we're dealing with a lot of other aspects over here. So let's read the words of the Rambam, just to give you a synopsis of who this person is, okay? So during the Messianic era, kingship will return to the Jewish people, okay? And the Jewish people, this is very important, will return to the land of Israel. This is from the Talmud. Now, that's a really big thing to say, because we, the Jewish people, have been outside the land of Israel for 2,000 years. So one of the signs that we're getting closer to this Messianic era is that lots of Jewish people are going to return to the land of Israel. Now, there's another thing as well. It's another topic, but it has to be mentioned because it's related. You know, there's an individual called Elijah the prophet, Eliyahu Hanavi. You heard of him? He comes every Pesach, right? He drinks the 5th wine. He watch see the wine go down. Well, there's a reason why he turns up every Pesach, comes to a Passover class to find out why. But he's a prophet. And we know that Elijah the prophet is going to come forward and is going to announce that the Messiah is coming. Which means before the Messiah comes, we have to have prophecy again. Right? I mean, that's just basic, it's chicken egg, right? In order to have the Messiah, someone's got to announce he's the Messiah, and he's have a prophet that does that. But we don't have prophecy anymore. Well, prophecy's got to return. So, but we're talking about Mashiach, why am I talking about prophecy? I'll tell you why. Because in order to have prophecy, most people are not aware of this, most of the Jewish people need to be living in the land of Israel. Most of the Jewish people, these are the rules. I don't make them up, don't shoot the messenger. Most of the Jewish people need to be living in the land of Israel, right? Which means 50.01%, whatever that is. And the prophecy and the prophet has to speak from Israel, because the land of Israel is so holy, it has the power and the ability to allow the prophet to speak. There are 2 stories from Jewish history where a prophet prophesied out to the land of Israel, but those were exceptions to the rule. The rule still stands. So now we're building up a picture. We need to have the majority of the Jewish people living in the land of Israel. By the way, where are we right now in that? Anybody know? There's a big question in that. According to the present Prime Minister of Israel, we've just in the past few years overtaken that point, where the majority of the Jewish people actually do live in the land of Israel, which is a wild thing because for 2,000 years, we've been outside as a majority. We've always had a presence in Israel. That's important. No matter what they tell you on CNN, the Jewish people and the BBC, the Jewish people have always had a strong presence in the land itself. But most of us no. Since the destruction of the Second Temple, we've been all over the world. So one of the signs of the Rambam, and he's based this on the Talmud, that we're close to this era, or we don't know what it is yet, is that we're going to see this crazy influx of Jews back to the land. Okay? And everyone can see right now, I mean, most of Russian Jewry has moved all the way to Brooklyn, but there's also a lot of them actually in Israel as well, you see. And we see the Ethiopians, right? And now the French are buying all the good, expensive properties after selling their houses on the Champs-Élysées, you know. So now we're seeing this very strong movement in. So that's number one. Okay, he's going to be a king, we said. And his main job, and this is the punchline of where we're going tonight, is this individual and the time. We're talking about a person and a time. That means that what the events in the world, this is good news, are leading to a time of what? Of absolute peace. And when I say peace, I don't mean like, all right, we're friends again, you know, and then you go home and like, you know, stab the person in the back. I mean, the peace we're talking about is the ultimate shalom. That is no more animosity, no more war. Now, the prophets use a lot of metaphors. Some say they're metaphorical, some say they're literal. And the metaphors they use are that the weapons that we use will be turned into plowshares, will be used for tilling the ground, right? Which are beautiful metaphors. Some say these metaphors meaning that we won't be having any wars anymore, and we'll be just involved in, like, you know, earth projects of promoting the world, see? And the lion will lie down with the lamb, and some say that's, you know, that's metaphorical, you see, and some say, no, it's actually literal. There's going to be a change in the world. Most say it's metaphorical. That there's going to be the change in the world that even animals will be part of this whole shlemut in the world. Isn't that good news? Now, there's all the wars in the world, of which I think there's officially 56 of them, okay? And the good news is we Jews are only involved in one, in case you're wondering. Look at the news, I think we're involved in all 56 of them, right? Other religions are involved in most of them, but we're actually involved in one of them, you see. But all those wars are going to disappear. And the advent, this is important, of the time, and then the person who's going to emerge from the time is going to somehow, and I don't know how, fix that. So there is no more war at all in the world. It's hard for me to imagine that. It's like trying to make me imagine a different color. I mean, like, when you're a kid, you ever had teachers, when I was a kid, teacher said, think of a different color. You can't. Your brain can't do that. So a lot of what we're discussing this evening, the idea of no war in the world at all, I know that we're like, you know, we're just not fighting, but we still hate each other, is going to disappear. It's a different and a radical, it shouldn't be radical, but it is radical, but that's coming, okay? And that's really what we mean. This is important. When Jews speak about the end of days, right, Yemot HaMashiach, right, we're not going to be floating around our pajamas, right, but there'll be no more war. That's really the main difference that's going to happen, right? And according to the Rambam and many other commentators, nothing supernatural. Things are going to carry on as they are now. No cataclysmic event, right? No blowing up of like countries, right? No death of like a third of the population, right? I mean, that may happen. We don't want it to happen, but it doesn't have to happen. What does have to happen to know this person is the Mashiach and this era has come is that we have absolute peace. This is a key Jewish concept. If there is no peace, there is no Messiah. This is one of the reasons, and there's many other reasons, that the Jewish people did not accept many of the messiahs or people who came forward from the Jewish people who said, hello, I'm the Messiah, or from other people who said, that's the Messiah. You get it? And one reason is we don't see it. And like, well, when they said peace, they didn't really mean peace, but it says peace, no more war. I mean, they spoke in metaphor, but I mean, no more war means no more war, no more, needless hatred and killing. So what were they saying? Right? So that's one of the reasons, and there's others, another two big ones, why we didn't actually accept Jesus, and the people came along and made the Jesus cult. When it started as the cult, the Jesus cult, and then grew into something much bigger, many of the Jewish people were obviously against that. Okay, so let's recap. There's a lot of it here. Messianic era, it's a time as well as a person. 2, kingship returns to the Jewish people. Okay, that sounds good. We'll have one leader everyone loves and everyone looks up to. 3, we're going to return to the land of Israel. Okay? Now, does that mean everyone? So that's a question. There will be a mass movement. And after Messiah comes, it will seem as though many, many Jews will want to go in during this era and when this person is around. Fame. This person is going to be very well known throughout the world. There will be no question, according to anyone, Jew or non-Jew, that this person is the Messiah. That's also a very big thing. Well, the fact that we now have this technology where everyone can hear everything in one instant is helpful, but that everyone agrees, and you don't forget about the non-Jews, that all the Jewish people agree on one thing. Do you know how big that is? I mean, as I said before, in most synagogues, they can't agree whether to have the AC on or off, open and close the window, or who actually gets called up to the Torah without a fist fight, unfortunately. I mean, not in my synagogue, but you get the idea, right? So over here, we're saying that one person, everyone's going to agree, and that means all Jews. Okay, as far as I'm concerned, that is the supernatural miracle that is actually going to accompany the Messiah as well. His fame, says the Rambam Maimonides, is going to reach the ends of the earth, right? Even more so than during King Solomon's reign. Now, King Solomon is the person we always go back to because during his reign, the Jewish people were at one of the highest points of Jewish history. Right? Everything was absolutely fantastic. All the other kings and queens respected the Jews, didn't try to fight with us. Right? We had our first temple in Jerusalem, in its right place, and we were pretty much at a zenith of Jewish history. That's like the Solomon era, right? Shlomo Melech's era is seen as the best time. It was so great, by the way, that we actually didn't, this is unusual, we didn't accept converts. Why would that be? If things are going so great, you want to bring them in. And what's the answer? Why wouldn't we accept converts at that time? Because we were dubious. Right? We're very suspectful of anyone who's like, oh, I want to be Jewish. We're like, of course you do. Right? We're in charge. Right? Everyone loves us. You see? So, unfortunately, we can't accept you now. We need you to come forward when things aren't so good. And it's a known thing that Jewish things actually, right? I mean, when we're running Hollywood, in the media, do we actually run the media? I wish we would, right? When we're running everything, someone wants to convert, then it's fantastic, right? But if someone wants to convert during the Holocaust, when I heard conversion rates were very low for some reason, I don't know why. But when someone's, at that time, we're like, okay, they're more, that's, they probably actually really want to become Jewish at that time. So we look about the time of King, and really what we're talking about is up to that level, which is interesting because after the Messiah comes, there'll be a break-off point where no one else can convert to Judaism, which means, and this you'll hopefully find fascinating as well, right before Mashiach comes, and when Mashiach is an era and a person, there's going to be an influx of people who want to convert to Judaism. Right? There's going to be an influx in because there's a feeling in the world as though this is the last chance. Do you know what I'm talking about? I can't prove it to you, but even in my experience, I'm seeing a lot of people who are, over the past year, I've had many people I know be involved with actually converted to Judaism. 3 of them, funnily enough, are actually getting married in a 1 to 2 month period. Isn't that weird? People I'm involved in. Anyway. So there is this feeling as though we got to get in now. Okay? And the reason being because there's going to be a certain cutoff point because then we become suspect. So we're moving up to that point. And additionally, the nations of the world will make real lasting peace with the Jewish people who, for the most part, will be in the land of Israel. I just want to put this into context. When we talk about the land of Israel, I know I've spoken about it a lot because I've said it's a major part of Jewish life. But if you read these words 70 years ago, you think, cuckoo, cuckoo. Well, most of the Jews in Israel, it's like most Jews being wiped out in concentration camps. And we've seen this very quick, and this is important, very fast movement into a whole new era for our people. And can you see the amazing flip? We've gone from the concentration camps to, it's messianic. I mean, it's got to flip, you got to trust me. That's why the world, the Jewish world, is very into the whole messianic thing for the past 30, 40, 50 years, right? Because we're seeing this quick change of the movement of Jews, so the conversation of Mashiach has become a big thing in Jewish life. Okay? And that's one of the reasons why many people are actually focusing their attention on this particular topic. Okay, so that's a little bit more about the era. But the person himself, who said will be a descendant of King David, will have a level of prophecy himself, whatever that means, but not the level of Moses. Okay, so we make a separation. So with like the beginning of the Jewish people and the end of Jewish people, it literally comes full circle, but not as great. Right? That's one of the caveats. No one will be the level of Moshe Rabbeinu, right? But this is as close as you can get. Okay? Okay. So what's his job? What's the Messiah really going to do? Okay. So number one, he's got to come from the house of David. He's got to be extremely learned in Torah, involved in Jewish life and mitzvot. That's a given. He's got to persuade. He's got to have a tremendous power of persuasion to persuade people to come back. Okay. If there are wars, this person will have to somehow be involved in those wars, okay, and fight those wars and be involved in helping the Jewish people conquer enemies that have been our enemies for a long time. And finally, and probably one of the most important parts, this person is going to have to build the third temple. Now we're dealing with a little political problem, because the third temple cannot be built in New Jersey or in Canada or in Haifa or Tel Aviv. It's got to be in Jerusalem. And it's got to be specifically in one place. Does anyone know where it's got to be built? On the Temple Mount. So you're like, okay, but we Jews, since 1967, after 2,000 years, now actually have Temple Mount. Yeah, we do. And it does belong to us. It's actually run by the Waqf, right? Run by the Arab population in Jerusalem. They have control over it, although it's actually technically ours. Okay? And there is actually on top a mosque. See? So when there's rumors, are you getting how this becomes like a political situation as well? Are you seeing the connect over here? When there is rumors and discussion in Jewish thought, Jewish history, and Jewish life, and Jewish law, that a third temple is going to be built where you have a mosque, you can imagine the antagonism that comes out of this particular Jewish concept. It just is. Now, when these ideas were written down and given to us, we had a temple, as actually precedes that, actually, and more importantly, there was no mosque on top. Okay? That was only, what, 600, 700 years old that there's actually been a mosque on top. So you can see how what we're discussing over here has certain political, geopolitical ramifications. Okay? And of course, most of the Jews, we said, will gather and come to the land of Israel. That's pretty much it. In other words, with all the other stories and discussions, we as Jews are looking forward to that time that we can finally not be controlled and hurt and threatened. And basically we're saying, when Mashiach comes, there's no more anti-Semitism. The bad news is, until Mashiach comes, there will be. You can do all the seminars, all the discussions, all the groups, all the role play, all the media, all the advertising, all the internet documentary, anything you want, you can put up forward. This, however, is a given. There will be anti-Semitism until Mashiach comes, and then it's just going to stop. I don't know exactly how. I don't know if it's going to be militarily. I don't know if it's going to be philosophically, right? But there's another angle to all of this as well. And it goes like this. I know we're covering a lot of area. We, the Jewish people, have been in 4 exiles, okay? 4 exiles through Jewish history. We are presently in the 4th one. The 4th one is called the exile of Edom, okay? And it's called the exile of Rome, which, interesting enough, is where the base of Christianity is today. So the other 3 exiles, right, including the Purim one we spoke about, the Jewish people were in Persia, it had a start date and a finish date. We were told, for example, on the Purim, the Paras one, the whole Megillah story, it would last for 70 years. Now, there's a discussion when those 70 years begin and when those 70 years end. Right? That was a discussion that came out, and there was a difference of opinion, because if it starts here, it ends over here. If it starts over here, it ends over here. So that was it. But we knew it'd be 70 years, and there's nothing you could do about it. The Jewish people made mistakes. They were exiled 70 years. Then you come back and build the second temple. And the other exiles they had beginning dates and start and end dates. The difference is, and this should clear up the first thing I told you, that this particular exile has two potential end dates. One is a set date, right? Bito. In other words, it's going to get better. Jewish history is going to end good. Right? This movie that we're watching, that we're part of, called Jewish History, has an end scene, and the end scene, just like the last page of the book, or the last scene of the movie, is good. It all makes sense. Oh, I see, that's why all that stuff happened. It all comes together. You can't stop in the middle of a movie and say, but he's the good guy, why is he being killed? And she's terrible, why is she being... Because you realize at the end, actually, she's not as bad, and he's not as good, and actually they were bad, but eventually they needed this to happen, so this could happen, and it all comes together. Right? You get that idea? So it all comes together at the end in the final scene. So one opinion is that final scene is a given, it's set, and we don't know when it is. You don't know when it is. Well, the question is why? Why can't we just be told the end of the scene will be in 2032 or 2013, you know? I mean, the Mayans, I mean, they like gave a hint at least. Why can't we? And the obvious answer is, well, if you know where the end is, what are you going to do? Right? You're going to be like, oh, it's all going to be fine anyway. You'll do nothing at all. You're like, oh, everything's going to turn out great. Right? The prophet thought there's an end. They gave us an end date. That's the end of it. You know, it's like a birthday. Right? I'll wait for it. I'll do nothing, and then that's the end of it. You see? And people won't bother trying to help or trying to get involved because we're given this end date. So one reason is because once you have an end date to whatever life's experiences are, you won't enjoy it when it actually comes out. You'll do nothing about it. The other answer is because there is no end date. We, as a people, have the ability, unlike the other three exiles, to bring it forward. Which means that we can do certain things that can speed it up. In other words, there's an end date. But we have the ability, somehow through our actions, what those actions are is, not for now, but we can bring, well, I mentioned it, we can bring that end date closer. It's a flexible thing. It's called in Jewish philosophy, achishena. By doing certain things, it happens to be the things we're talking about are mitzvot between each other. When we're respectful to each other, and when we're good between Ben Adam Lachaver to each other, we have the ability to speed up this goodness that comes at the end of days. Not when we go to war against other nations, not like if we destroy that nation, the Messiah will come, as other people seem to think. But when we treat each other with respect, and how do we know this? Because what destroyed the temple? People being bad to each other. So people being bad, not between us and God, between us and each other, being rude and nasty and all this kind of stuff, and killing people and murder and adultery, all these things that destroy our relationship with other people, that stuff, that destroys and breaks the Jewish people and kicks us out of Israel. So what brings us back in, obviously, what's that? When we're good and nice to each other. So through those actions between us and each other, we have the ability to bring closer this era that we're discussing tonight, this Messianic era, where there will ultimately be this kind of ripple effect of peace and real love. It sounds like a song when you say it in English, but there'll be this idea of complete harmony and tranquility and peace between all nations in the entire world. So we as a Jewish people, it's worth knowing, have a very optimistic view of where we're heading. You see that? It's like, it's all death and destruction. And we say, no, I mean, maybe your religion says that, but in Jewish philosophy, where your religion actually came from, it does not say that. It says the ultimate end is good. There could be wars and challenges and difficulties along the way. And that we have to deal with, because war is inevitability, and we're not walking around like Penn Station, like hugging each other and giving each other flowers, let's bring the Messiah. I mean, that could be a good thing to do, but I don't recommend it. But that's what we're saying. We're saying maybe you need to have an army, and maybe you need to protect yourself, and maybe you need to go and campaign, and maybe you do need to speak to people and tell people they're doing the wrong. That's good, but until we get together and work together as a people, right? Not accepting every opinion, but working together as a people on a personal level in a respectful way, because that's how we're being graded, then we have a much higher possibility of this ultimate good end coming. So that's pretty much where we are going. So the last thing I want to do, which is probably the most fascinating, is, and I've already mentioned a little bit, are there any signs that we're close? So a lot of the prophecies and a lot of the writings from thousands of years ago actually talk in detail about what, if we know we're close to this end point. Okay? So one of them we said already is most of the Jews going back to Israel, and that's impressive, right? Because according to Christianity, the reason we've been dispersed and exiled over the entire world is because we didn't accept Jesus as the Messiah. But that changed, we all went back. Okay, so that's one big thing, we're all going back. Okay, that's impressive. Okay. But there's a couple of others. Another one is that the land of Israel will bloom. There's going to be a change in the land of Israel. Now, for us, we grew up with Jaffa oranges, right? We grew up with Gush Katif lettuce, which actually doesn't come Gush Katif anymore. We gave Gaza back, but away. But generally speaking, we've seen in our... But before we turned up on the scene, right, 20, 30, 40 years ago, the land of Israel was actually a dust bowl. Right? There was nothing coming out of it. It was a large desert. Right? I think I brought here before, Mark Twain, right, in the late 1800s, actually wrote when he went to the land of Israel, Palestine as it was then, he said, great place, love it, but so dry, you can barely get a cactus out of the ground. So one of the signs is that suddenly you're going to see this agricultural resurgence in the land itself. Okay? Now there's a metaphor there as well, right? Because things are coming out of the ground and resurging. But physically as well, we're going to actually see that beautiful resurgence. There's another thing, and I hope you appreciate this. Now check this out. We're now in the year 5772. According to Jewish tradition, the world as it is can only last for 6,000 years. And then the end has to come. That's the end point, for sure. Okay? So we are pretty close, right, to this wonderful time. And this is good. I mean, you shouldn't be scared. This is actually a very wonderful thing. We're close to the end. So it goes like this. Those 6,000 years are compared to the 6 days of the week and the 6 days of creation. Okay? Now, if every one of those 1,000 years is a different day, we right now, in the year 5772, right before 6,000, are right near the end. Right? Is that fair? So if we, each day, where are we now? Which day are we on right now? Which day are we on? Friday. Right? This is Friday. As in, historically speaking, we're on Friday. Where on Friday? Right before Shabbat. Right? What's Shabbat? That's the 7th. Okay? Now, interesting, Shabbat is actually called the time where Kulo Tov, everything is good, and that is a small example of the Messianic era, where you're not involved in the world, and you're not meant to be arguing, but everything is peaceful, right? You're not involved. So that's called that Shabbat is a metaphor. Okay, so Shabbat, that's Messianic era, that's lovely. We've already spoken about that. I want to talk about Erev Shabbat. What's Erev Shabbat like? Erev Shabbat means right before Shabbat comes in, right? Not Friday night. Has anyone been in a Jewish home that actually keeps Shabbat before Shabbat comes in? What's it like? Is it a quiet, tranquil place? No. If you go to a house before Shabbat comes in, it's a complete crazy environment. Everyone is going crazy. Quickly, Shabbat's coming, we've got 20 minutes, right? We've got 3 minutes, whatever it is. Get in the shower, get your socks on, because once Shabbat comes in, what happens? It's all done. Right? You can't turn the lights on and off again. You can't cook anything. Whatever's done is done. It's all over. So it's not a calm time. It's a very, very stressful time. But it's stress knowing full well that soon we're going to have tranquility, because once Shabbat comes in, it's done. Whatever's cooked is cooked. Whatever's turned on is turned on. Whatever's turned off is turned off. Whatever money is made is made. It's all done. That's Erev Shabbat. Well, that's Shabbat. Erev Shabbat is, woo, let's get on with it, quit everyone, boom. All right? So like, I'm 1 minute running around, screaming, shouting, everyone's like going out as crazy. And then, when I first got married, quick story, I'm telling you stories tonight. We had a baby, my daughter, Racheli, and there's a point where you train babies to use the bathroom rather than a diaper. So, I think I've told the story before here, but we had guests coming over. My wife and I like to have a lot of guests, and we were at this training point. And the way you train them is you actually don't put a diaper on them anymore. They have to walk around without a diaper, as you will learn, because they wear a diaper, they're making the diaper. So basically, you do it, and then they basically signal to you they need to go to the bathroom. Well, they're meant to, you see, and they don't always get the chance to signal. So we left my daughter on a chair, and it was Erev, I'll never forget this. We're living in an apartment, and I was in yeshiva. I was on the phone with someone. My wife was on the phone, and suddenly my wife screams and says, "Hang up now!" And we looked down, and my daughter, who we had actually sitting on a chair, and still sitting there, had actually left a little gift for us, right, on this chair, which at that moment was a white chair. We've since covered it green. So we had to clean, and we had guests coming in a few minutes. You get the idea? We had guests coming who were going to arrive. I was going to shul with them, you see, to bring in Shabbat. So I was like, all right, we threw the phones down, and we're like, get it with that, and you clean it quickly. There's a duty on a chair. I'm like, go, guests coming. We're scooping it up. Yeah, where do we get the clean? We got the bucket out of the water. We're cleaning this whole thing, right? And so it's big West Day, all right? And then Shabbat comes in. Everything had to be away. And these people walking in, hi, good Shabbos, you see. Like, oh, wow. Isn't that Shabbos great? They walk in, everything's so calm. And we're like, yeah, come and take a seat. Not that one. Right? There's another 6. You can have any of those. Just don't touch that one. You see? So they hadn't been there had they seen 2 minutes before, it was complete chaos. You see? So there's this idea, as we enter, try to follow, as we enter into this, we're now Erev Shabbat. Erev Shabbat is a crazy time where things are happening really fast. And there's this idea in the Zohar, the Kabbalah, brings down that, and he brings down the date for this, which is pretty amazing, that you're going to see there's going to be this, it's not his wording, but this is what he really says, a revolution where life starts to speed up. And there's going to be this massive movement of creation of things and making things, and things are going to be fast. And he says the reason is because it's Erev Shabbos. I mean, historically speaking. So when you see the world speed up, do we live in a fast world today? We just see, yeah. Right? I mean, and go back 100 years, just 100 years, about 70 years, 60 years, right? Or 30 years. You have one thing that lasted a long time, you see. And now we have this world where suddenly I buy it, and a day later it's outdated, you see. Everything is too quick for us. Everything's moving quickly. Trust me, it's got a tinge of this Erev Shabbat idea of the Zohar. He actually quotes a date which ends up becoming, I think, I should know the date, 1886. He actually quotes a date from 2,000 years ago when he wrote, Shabbat Chai wrote the Zohar, which actually coincides with the Industrial Revolution starting, and this sudden, quick movement of life. So that's another sign that you bring down that things are going to... There is one scary thing. Do you want to do scary tonight? You don't have scary. Wow, it's such a nice day. Why are you running my house? There is one thing which the Vilna Gaon says. Now, the important thing is that any bad prophecy or thought does not have to happen. Any good one does. This is a Jewish concept, by the way. This is very true. Whenever you hear a bad prophecy, bad things are going to happen, it doesn't have to happen. We can change our ways and we can make it good. Anything good's predicted, no matter how bad we are, it's got to happen. Okay? That's a basic Jewish concept. So one thing the Vilna Gaon does say, he says there will be a war right before Mashiach comes, and according to him, and he was writing 200 years ago, it will last 7 minutes. Now, the idea of a 7-minute war, right, 200 years ago was, I mean, back then they had a 100 years war, didn't they, right? Which wasn't even 100 years, I don't think, but you get the idea. It was longer, you see. I mean, even World War I, which is fairly recent, World War II was like 4 or 5 years. The idea of a 7-minute war, I don't know if he knew what he was talking about when he culled this from these sources, but it is mentioned, okay? So that is mentioned, but as we said, nothing bad has to happen. All goodness can happen. I'll just read for you, if you don't mind. If you know, this is from the Mishnah. Mishnah is the oral Torah that goes back 2,000 years. But at the end, people don't realize it comes from the Mishnah itself. It says over there in the tractate called Sota, what society is going to be like before Mashiach comes. The era, not the person, the era itself is going to have a certain flavor to it. And it says, in the time of the footsteps of Mashiach, that's an expression, right, the idea of just on the heels of it coming through, insolence will increase, right, that's chutzpah, by the way. Honor will decrease. The vine will yield its fruit abundantly. Wine will be expensive. Actually, Dave bought me some very expensive wine last night, which is very delicious. The government will turn to heresy, and no one's going to even tell them off. Where people go for scholars, meet a place of scholars will be full of immorality. The Galil, the north of Israel, will be destroyed and made desolate. Dwellers will be going from place to place. Wisdom of the learned will degenerate. Those who are good people will be despised. Truth will be lacking. Youths will put old men to shame. Now, this for us is pretty obvious. Of course we do, right? But in the old days, it wasn't actually the way it was, right? Old people were actually respected. And right, I'm showing you what it says. The old will stand in the presence of the young, like an upside-down world. A son will hate his father. A daughter will rise against her mother. A daughter-in-law against her mother-in-law. That's pretty accurate. A man's enemies will be members of his household. This is interesting. The face of the generation will be like the face of a dog. That's a very famous piece, by the way. So I'm going to stop on that for 1 second. So right now, it's telling me things which you either see or you don't see. And then it says this thing, the generation will be like the face of a dog. What does that mean? So the Vilna Gaon describes and says, you know you're near the end when things are going to change in a very good, drastic, big way when you see the following. When a person takes a dog out, what happens? Who usually walks in front? The person or the dog? A dog, right? Now, if you watch that scene of a person walking with their dog, the dog's always in front. Yeah? Usually the dog's in front, right? When the dog's running in front, you look at that scene, you think, if you were like you would think the dog is leading the person. But how do you know the person's leading? Because when the person makes a left turn, the dog turns his face around, sees where the master is going, and then goes back and follows them. So he says, you'll see there'll be a change in leadership, and I personally think this is the idea of democracy coming through, where it looks like one person is leading everyone else, see? But then the real master, meaning the masses, will turn around, and this person will say, that's what I really want. So they say this idea that real leaders won't be leading anymore, right? People will be following the mass. The masses will take control of the entire world and with people. And then, of course, the famous quote, they will beat their swords into plowshares and their spears into pruning hooks. Nation will not lift up sword against nation, and neither shall they learn war anymore. Does anyone know where that's written? Besides in the prophets of Isaiah. It's actually on the side of the, anybody know?
The UN building?
UN building, yeah. That's actually, those words from our Bible, from our prophet Isaiah, is actually written on the side of the UN building. Unfortunately, people inside are not aware that's actually there. We should actually take them outside and show them the writing on the wall outside, really. Literally, the writing on the wall, to show them that's really what's going on. But that's actually a quote from our prophets, and our prophecy, that I just read to you, actually written on the wall, right? On certainly the wall outside of the United Nations over there. So it's something which the entire world seemingly wants and is... and finally, there will be a change, the Ramban says, that people will change in their hearts. Somehow, there's going to be a change of the way people feel about life in the world, which itself is hard for us to understand, but people will naturally not be inclined to do bad things. I don't know how we're going to reprogram 6 billion people into want to do that, but somehow there'll be a certain clarity that's going to come upon the world that's going to change the way we view life and our relationships as well. And that, in a very short nutshell, is the Jewish concept of the era of the Mashiach and the individual themselves. Any questions? Yeah. So the final prophet of the final prophecy of Malachi, so this is, we've had like many prophets, but there was one final one, which is written in our scriptures, and it says something very interesting. It does say that at the end of days, you're going to have this very strange reality where children will know more about Judaism, Jewish life, and God than their parents do. And that's a very strange thing to say because it was always the way that parents taught their kids how to be Jewish. Now, there have been certain times in history where certain individuals knew more than their parents, but it's like the entire generation is going to be more connected and more knowledgeable of God and Jewish life than their parents are, right? So that's also one thing that people have seen post-Holocaust when unfortunately, many people were disconnected, well, they killed actually, and those who survived were disconnected, that suddenly kids, for us it's obvious, of course I know more than my parents. We're talking for 2,000 years, it was never that way. parents always pass on tradition to their kids, and now the whole thing is completely upside down. Right? And by the way, this is not just true in Judaism, in life as well. Right? We've entered this world now where actually they see this is actually the reason chutzpah is going to exist, because kids feel they know more than their parents because things are moving so quickly that in the time it takes a parent to become a parent and for a child to become knowledgeable, they will receive a lot more information. So they say the chutzpah thing that we're speaking about, and which we see in our generation pretty clearly, that comes out between children and parents and this lack of fear, is that I know more than them. You know what I'm saying? I mean, you know, like some 50-year-old guy needs his kid to, like, you know, fix the computer. Right? So the 3-year-old's like, you know, typing in stuff, you see. So it's not just in Jewish life. There will be this idea that the younger generation will actually be more knowledgeable than the... just one quick question I had on this whole discussion I'm discussing with you tonight, and that is, why do we merit the Mashiach? Right? Why do we merit this beautiful, fantastic, peaceful era? There were many great people who lived before us. And we all, for example, will say our grandparents. Everyone says my grandparents, I love them. My great-grandparents, my grandfather spoke how fantastic he and she was, you see? So, and their great-grandparents, I'm sure they spoke about, so the further back you go, the greater people were. Is that a fair analysis? Right? Pretty much everyone says, oh, I love my Babi. She's so sweet. She says, I love her so much. Everyone says that, don't they? I'm a bum compared to them, right? But they said about their grandparents. So how come they didn't have this amazing era of goodness, and we, right, the bums at the end of the line, I'm speaking about myself as well, we get it? Is that a fair question? Do you understand the question? Why do we merit this peaceful, amazing Messianic time, which is coming our way, God willing, or very soon, and which we anticipate and want to bring forward, as we said? Why do we get it? They don't. Bring 1,000 years ago. Right? Go back to, you know, Rabbi Akiva and, I don't know, and the Ramban and Rashi. They were great people. So the answer is, was shown to me by the Kotel. The Kotel, have you seen it? Actually, at the bottom, there's very, very big bricks. Right? You've been to the tunnel tours? Well, massive, like tons and tons. And then the one above it is a little smaller. And the one above that is a little smaller than that one. And then you go outside onto the promenade of the Kotel area, and look, and the one on top is a tiny little teensy-weensy little brick on top. See? So when you're looking at it, you think, wow, that's on top. But that only brick got to be up there because of the massive bricks that are underneath. So when we say that it's coming in our generation, it doesn't mean that we're so great. It just means that all of Jewish history is a cumulative experience, right? Like cumulative exams. Right? We are on the backs of great people. In other words, we are judged as a whole over many generations rather than as a... So we're the little rocks on top, but we get to see things because we have a beautiful view, see? But we're coming on the back of great people who came before us, yeah. Okay, so there is another, very, very good. So there's a discussion of something called resurrection of the dead. That's actually a completely different topic. No, it is, no, seriously. It's actually another principle of the Rambam of what that means actually, although we're saying right now that people are coming back from little pieces, but the idea of other people coming back and reincarnating or physical people coming back to life is actually a different topic. This is its own topic for its own discussion and does not actually necessarily involve anything like that. Oh, because they will, very, very, it could well be, but in the end, one generation is going to have this amazing experience, you see, and I'm hoping it's our generation. I mean, because I think we need it. Don't we need it? I mean, our grandparents, we need it. Right? We're the ones who are like, Erev Shabbos, I'm going absolutely crazy, right? And it's speeding up, and I need it to, you hear? So, and the way to connect to this reality is via Shabbat, by the way. Right? Shabbat is actually Me'ein Olam Haba. It's got a hint of it. It's like the manifestation of this idea of Messianic perfect time is Shabbat. So if you want to feel it, at least in a 60th, last week's quote, it's called a 60th of that experience. You can just taste it. This is a very quick overview. I apologize. Usually I like to finish, but I think we've covered and hit the main points. Have a great evening. We'll pick it up next week. We'll be discussing Ayin Hara, the evil eye, and red strings and that kind of stuff will be next week, God willing. Have a great week.